Have you ever been left standing in a white dress, waiting for someone who never came? Jessica Morgan stood at the altar of St. Patrick's Church in Boston, Massachusetts, in front of 200 guests, holding a bouquet of white roses that trembled in her shaking hands. The organists had played the processional music. Her father had walked her down the aisle. The bridesmaids were lined up perfectly behind her. Everything was ready, except the groom never showed up. This is the story of the worst day of Jessica's life. 10 years of carrying that humiliation like a brand on her heart, and the letter that explained everything. The morning of her wedding day started like a dream. Jessica woke up in her childhood bedroom in her parents' house in suburban Boston, sunlight streaming through the curtains, excitement bubbling in her chest. Today she would marry Michael Chen, the man she'd loved since college, the man who made her laugh until she couldn't breathe, the man who'd proposed on a beach in Cape Cod with tears in his eyes. Her bridesmaids arrived at 9, bringing champagne and pastries and enough energy to power the entire city. They spent the morning doing hair and makeup, taking silly photos, reminiscing about how Jessica and Michael had met at a library in Boston University, both reaching for the same book on architecture. Their hands touching, eyes meeting. That electric moment when you know your life just changed. Michael was an architect, brilliant, passionate, with a smile that could light up a room. He came from a close-knit Chinese-American family who had welcomed Jessica with open arms. His mother had cried with joy when Michael announced the engagement. His father had pulled Jessica aside and told her, "You make my son happier than I've ever seen him." They'd been together for 4 years, living together for 2. They'd adopted a rescue dog named Murphy. They'd talked about having kids, about growing old together, about all the ordinary, beautiful things that make up a life. Jessica had no doubts, no cold feet, no last-minute fears. She was completely, utterly certain that Michael Chen was her person, her forever, her home. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. By 1:30, Jessica was in her dress, a simple, elegant, aligned gown with lace sleeves that her mother had cried over when Jessica first tried it on. Her father kept tearing up every time he looked at her. Her bridesmaids were lined up, perfect in their navy blue dresses. At 1:45, Jessica's maid of honor, Sarah, got a text from the best man. Michael hadn't arrived at the church yet. He wasn't answering his phone. No one knew where he was. "He's probably just running late," Sarah said, but her voice was uncertain. "You know how Michael is with time." Jessica laughed nervously. Michael was actually obsessively punctual. But maybe he was nervous. Maybe he'd lost track of time. Maybe there was traffic. By 2 o'clock, when Jessica was supposed to walk down the aisle, Michael still hadn't arrived. The guests were getting restless. Jessica stood in the church's bridal room, her stomach churning, calling Michael's cell phone over and over. It went straight to voicemail every time. By 2:30, Jessica's father had driven to Michael's apartment. Empty. His car was gone. His suit was still hanging in the closet. By 3 o'clock, the whispers had started. The guests knew something was wrong. Some were leaving. Jessica's mother was crying. Sarah was on the phone with everyone they knew, trying to find Michael. By 3:30, Jessica had to face the truth that everyone else had already accepted. Michael wasn't coming. He wasn't stuck in traffic. He wasn't having car trouble. He had left. He had chosen not to show up to his own wedding. Jessica walked out to the altar anyway. She needed to see it. Needed to stand in the space where she was supposed to have gotten married. The church was half empty now, but the people who remained watched her with pity that made her want to scream. She stood there in her white dress, holding her bouquet, and the full weight of it crashed down on her. He wasn't coming. The man she loved, the man she'd trusted with her entire heart, had abandoned her in the most public, most humiliating way possible. Jessica didn't cry. Not then. She was too shocked, too numb. She just stood there while her father came and took her arm and led her back down the aisle, not as a bride, but as a woman whose world had just ended. Michael's phone was disconnected. His email bounced back. His apartment was mostly cleared out. His parents were devastated, saying Michael had seemed happy and excited about the wedding. They hired a private investigator. They found nothing. Jessica moved through the following weeks like a ghost, dealing with canceled honeymoons, returned gifts, and pitying looks. But the worst part wasn't the humiliation, it was not knowing why. What had she done wrong? Had he ever really loved her? Her friends said, "He's a coward, you're better off." But none of that answered the question that haunted her. Why? 6 months later, her therapist helped her understand it was trauma. "You may never get answers," Dr. Chen said gently. "You need to find a way to live with that." So Jessica tried. She threw herself into work, moved to a new apartment, went on dates that never went anywhere because she couldn't trust anyone. Years passed. 1, 2, 5. She built a life that looked good from the outside, but there was always a wound that wouldn't heal. She dated someone seriously when she was 31. She said yes, but had a panic attack and broke up with him the next day. "I can't put on another white dress and hope someone shows up," she sobbed. By the time Jessica turned 35, 10 years had passed since the wedding that never happened. She'd stopped talking about Michael, stopped telling the story at parties. Most of her new friends didn't even know about it. It had become a closed chapter, a scar she'd learned to live with, even though it never stopped hurting. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday in October, Jessica received a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A physical letter, forwarded through her parents' address, because it was the only one Michael would have known. The return address was from a hospice facility in Seattle, Washington. Jessica almost threw it away without opening it, but something made her break the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but she recognized it. Michael's handwriting. "Dear Jessia," it began. "I know I have no right to contact you after what I did. I know this letter can never make up for the pain I caused you. But I'm dying, and before I go, you deserve to know the truth." Jessica's hands started shaking so badly, she had to sit down. The letter continued. 3 weeks before our wedding, I went to the doctor for what I thought was a routine checkup. I'd been tired, losing weight, having night sweats. I thought maybe I was working too hard, stressing about the wedding. The doctor ran tests. I got the results 2 days before our wedding. Stage 4, lymphoma, aggressive, terminal. The oncologist gave me 6 months, maybe a year, with treatment. Jessica's vision blurred with tears. No, this couldn't be real. I sat in that doctor's office, and my first thought was about you. About standing at the altar, marrying you, and then telling you I was dying. About you becoming a wife and a widow in the same year. About you spending our first year of marriage watching me die. About you having to take care of me, sacrifice your life, watch the man you loved waste away. I couldn't do that to you, Jessica. I couldn't trap you in that nightmare. The letter shook in Jessica's hands. She could barely read through her tears, but she forced herself to continue. I know what I did was cowardly. I know leaving you at the altar was cruel and selfish. I knew it would hurt you terribly, but I thought I truly believed that it would hurt less than the alternative. That it would be easier for you to hate me for abandoning you than to love me and watch me die. That you'd move on faster if I was the villain instead of the victim. I wanted you to have a life, Jessica, a full, beautiful life with someone who could give you 50 years instead of 6 months. I wanted you to have everything I couldn't give you, so I left. I destroyed what we had so completely that you wouldn't try to find me, wouldn't try to save me, wouldn't sacrifice yourself for someone who was already gone. Jessica couldn't breathe. 10 years of thinking he hadn't loved her. 10 years of thinking she wasn't enough. 10 years of carrying humiliation and rejection. And all along, he'd been dying. All along, he'd been trying to save her. The letter continued. I was wrong. I know that now. I should have told you the truth. I should have let you make your own choice. I should have trusted you with the hardest thing Adi ever faced instead of making that decision for you. I thought I was being noble, but I was just being a coward. I was scared. Scared of dying. Scared of putting you through that. Scared of not being strong enough to let you take care of me. So I ran, and I've regretted it every day since. There was more. Details about the treatment he'd tried, the clinical trials, the years he'd fought against odds that were stacked against him. He'd outlived his initial prognosis by nearly 10 years, a medical miracle, his doctor said. But now, finally, His body was giving up. "I'm in hospice now," the letter concluded. "I have days, maybe weeks left. I spent 10 years wanting to contact you, wanting to explain, but being too ashamed. What right did I have to disrupt your life again? To ask for forgiveness for something unforgivable? But my hospice counselor convinced me that you deserved the truth, even if it's too late to matter. You deserve to know that I loved you, that I never stopped loving you, that leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did, and I've paid for it every day since. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to understand. I just wanted you to know the truth, that it was never about you not being enough. You were everything. You were too much, in the best way. And I loved you too much to let you watch me die. I'm sorry, Jessica, for everything. I hope you found happiness. I hope you found someone who could give you the life I couldn't. You deserved the world. I just wish I could have been the one to give it to you. With all my love. Always, Michael." Jessica sat on her living room floor and cried harder than she'd ever cried in her life. Cried for the man she'd lost. Cried for the 10 years of misunderstanding. Cried for the choice he'd made that destroyed both of them. Cried for the love that had been so strong he'd thought abandoning her was the kindest thing he could do. She called Sarah, barely able to speak through her tears. "He was dying," she managed to say. "Sarah, he was dying. He left because he was dying and he didn't want me to watch." "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. "Oh, Jess. He thought he was saving me. He thought it would hurt less if I hated him. Did it?" Jessica thought about 10 years of carrying rejection, of thinking she wasn't enough, of being unable to trust anyone. No, it hurt so much worse, because I didn't understand, because I thought it was about me. That night, Jessica looked up the hospice facility. It was in Seattle, 3,000 miles away. Michael had been there for 2 weeks. The letter had taken time to reach her. She called the facility. The nurse who answered was kind but firm. "Mr. Chen is in our care, but he's very weak. Are you a family?" "I was supposed to be his wife," Jessa said, 10 years ago. Can you tell him?" "Can you tell him Jessica called?" "And that I got his letter." The nurse promised to pass along the message. Jessica hung up, staring at her phone, her heart racing. Should she fly to Seattle? Should she try to see him? After 10 years, after everything, what would she even say? The next morning, Jessica woke up to a voicemail from the hospice facility. It had come in at 3 a.m. Boston time. The nurse's voice was gentle but sad. "Miss Morgan, this is Riverside Hospice calling. I'm so sorry to inform you that Michael Chen passed away peacefully last night at 11:47 p.m. His last words were to tell you thank you for calling and that he was sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss." Jessica listened to the message 3 times, each time feeling something inside her break and rearrange itself. He was gone. Really gone this time. No chance to talk to him, to tell him she understood, to say goodbye properly. She sat in her apartment, feeling grief wash over her. Not the sharp, confused pain of 10 years ago, but something deeper and sadder. Grief for Michael, for the life they could have had, for the choice he'd made that hurt them both, but also something else. Understanding. Finally, after 10 years, Jessica called her therapist and got an emergency appointment. Dr. Chen listened to the whole story, then said, "How do you feel?" "Sad," Jessica said. "So incredibly sad. But also ... lighter." "He's wrong? He's dead, and I feel lighter." "You're lighter because you finally have answers," Dr. Chen explained. "You've carried the weight of not knowing for 10 years. That weight was crushing you. Now, you know it wasn't about you. It was never about you, and that changes everything." Over the following weeks, Jessica processed everything she'd learned. She was angry at Michael for making such a devastating choice without consulting her. She was heartbroken that he died alone, that she never got to tell him she understood. She was grateful he'd loved her enough to try to save her, even if his method was deeply flawed. She was sad for the life they could have had, even if it would have been short. But mostly, She was free. Free from the question that had haunted her for a decade. Free from the belief that she hadn't been enough. Free from the fear that there was something fundamentally wrong with her that made people leave. Michael had left not because she wasn't enough, but because she was everything. He'd left because he loved her so much, he couldn't bear to watch her sacrifice herself. It was misguided. It was wrong. It was devastating. But it was love. Jessica attended Michael's funeral in Seattle. His parents were there, older and sadder but welcoming when they saw her. His mother embraced her, crying. "He never stopped loving you," she said. "We didn't know why he left until he told us at the end. He made us promise not to contact you. He thought it was better if you moved on." "I never moved on," Jessica admitted. "I built a life, but I never moved on." "Can you forgive him?" Michael's father asked. Jessica thought about that question. Could she forgive someone for loving her so much he destroyed both their lives trying to protect her? Could she forgive a choice made from love, even when it caused such terrible pain? "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe forgiveness isn't the right word. I understand now, and understanding is something." 6 months later, Jessica was having coffee with Sarah when her friend asked, "Are you okay?" "Really okay?" Jessica considered the question. "I'm not the same person I was before Michael left, and I'm not the same person I was when I thought he just didn't love me. I'm someone who knows now that sometimes people hurt us because they're trying to protect us, that sometimes the cruelest acts come from love, that sometimes we make terrible choices with good intentions." "That's very philosophical," Sarah said. "I've had a lot of therapy," Jessica laughed. "But yeah, I think I'm okay. For the first time in 10 years, I don't wake up wondering why. I know why, and knowing makes all the difference." Jessica never remarried. She didn't want to, but she dated. She loved. She opened her heart again, carefully but genuinely. She learned that Michael's choice, while devastating, didn't define her worth. She learned that she could survive the worst kind of abandonment and still build a meaningful life. She learned that forgiveness isn't always necessary. Sometimes understanding is enough. On what would have been their 15-year wedding anniversary, Jessica went to a beach in Cape Cod, the same beach where Michael had proposed. She stood at the water's edge and finally said goodbye. Not to the man who left her at the altar, but to the man who had loved her so much he tried to save her from pain and ended up causing more. To the life they could have had. To the anger she'd carried. To the question that had haunted her. The wind picked up, salt spray misting her face. Jessica closed her eyes and let herself remember Michael the way he was brilliant, funny, full of life. She let herself remember their love when it was whole and then she let it go. "I understand now," she whispered to the ocean. "I don't know if I forgive you, but I understand, and maybe that's enough." She turned and walked back up the beach, leaving footprints that the tide would wash away. Behind her, the past. Ahead of her, whatever came next, and for the first time in 10 years, Jessica felt ready for it. Have you ever discovered that someone's cruelest action came from a place of love? Have you ever learned that the abandonment you thought was rejection was actually sacrifice? Sometimes people hurt us, trying to protect us. Sometimes the worst betrayals come from the best intentions. Sometimes understanding why doesn't erase the pain, but it transforms it into something we can finally carry. And sometimes that's enough. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about forgiveness, loss, and the complicated ways we love each other. Share in the comments, have you ever had to forgive someone who hurt you while trying to help you? Your story might be the answer someone else is searching for.